Hey, welcome back to the lecture. So in the last lecture, I was explaining about the block diagram of the Cortex-M4 processor. And remember that the Cortex-M4 processor is designed by ARM. That means the processor core, all its associated peripherals are actually in the software IP format, which will be passed on to the various microcontroller manufacturers like the ST Microelectronics, Texas Instruments, NXP, Microchip, Broadcom, etc. Okay, so the software IP of this design, okay, will be purchased by those microcontroller manufacturers, and they will integrate this engine into their microcontroller. And while integrating this engine, that means this CPU design with their microcontroller, they may remove some of the components from this design. For example, they may remove the memory protection unit, okay, they may remove the data watch point and trace unit. Okay, great. So now let's see what exactly is the difference between a Cortex-M4 processor and a microcontroller. Okay, so to understand this, let's take an example of a microcontroller which is there in the market. Okay, all right, so now let's take an example of this microcontroller STM32F446RE, which is actually designed by the ST Microelectronics, and they say it's a Cortex-M4 core with DSP and the FPU unit. Okay, so that means if you go and check your block diagram, okay, here you can see that the Cortex-M4 comes with optional floating point unit. Okay, the manufacturer may wish to implement this engine, or they may remove it. Okay, so it's highly dependent on the manufacturer. Okay, so they can include it or they can exclude it. Now what we'll do is, now let's check the block diagram of this microcontroller to understand in detail. Okay, so here I have the data sheet of this microcontroller, and in this document you will find the block diagram of this microcontroller. Okay, so don't try to open any document at your side. Okay, so just listen to the lecture. Okay, you may be having similar microcontroller or entirely different microcontroller from some other manufacturer, but don't worry about that. Just look at the block diagram of this microcontroller. The heart of this microcontroller is a CPU, okay, which is nothing but ARM Cortex-M4. Okay, so this unit, okay, is actually taken from the ARM. Okay, and the rest all is implemented by the ST. So, and if you go back to your block diagram of Cortex-M4 processor, this whole engine is nothing but this one. And take a look into this block diagram. This Cortex-M4 processor, as I said, it talks to the external world by using its 3 bus interfaces, that is I-code, decode and system bus interface that you can see here. Okay, so this engine, that is this CPU engine, talks to ST's implementation, okay, by using 3 bus interfaces, I bus, D bus and S bus, which we'll discuss later. Okay, so don't worry about that. Okay, so here this is a software IP given by the ARM, and these implementations are actually done by the ST, and they both meet at these bus interfaces. Okay, so now what I do is, now let me take another example of different microcontroller. Okay, so in this case let me consider a microcontroller from ST again, okay, which is this one, STM32F030R8. okay, and if you open the data sheet of this microcontroller, you will also see one block diagram of this microcontroller, so which is very similar to what you have seen previously. Okay, and here also you can see that, okay, there is a CPU block, okay, which is nothing but Cortex-M0 CPU in this case, because this microcontroller, that is STM32F030R8, okay, which is this one, okay, is based on Cortex-M0 CPU. Okay, great. So now let me take another example from Texas Instrument. Okay, so here is a data sheet of Texas Instruments MSP430G2X11 series of microcontrollers. Okay, and if you check the block diagram in this document, okay, so here it is. Okay, so in this case also you will see a block, a CPU block. Okay, but this microcontroller, okay, which is released by Texas Instrument, is not based on ARM CPU. Okay, so this CPU is designed by Texas Instrument itself. Okay, so remember that some of the MSP microcontrollers, they are not based on the CPU which are designed by ARM. Okay, for example, this microcontroller is based on a CPU which is designed by Texas Instrument itself. Okay, and Texas Instrument also has microcontrollers which are based on ARM CPU. Okay, for example, the TIWA series of microcontrollers released by Texas Instruments. Okay, take an example of this microcontroller, okay, which comes under TIWA series of microcontroller. Okay, so if you just check the architectural overview of this microcontroller, you will see that this microcontroller is actually based on the ARM Cortex M4F CPU. Okay, so F means this processor comes with the floating point unit. Okay, so that's why the letter F indicates that. Okay, and if you look at the block diagram of the microcontroller, apart from the CPU part, okay, it has various other parts such as its peripherals. Okay, so you can see various peripherals like GPIOs, timers, the serial communication peripherals, the data acquisition peripherals like ADC, CAN, DAC, okay, timers. Okay, and it has various bus interfaces such as HP bus, APB bus. Okay, so all these things we will understand later in this course, so need not to worry about that now. Okay, so our goal is just to understand the differences between the processor core, processor, and the microcontroller. Okay, and remember that in this block diagram, the ARM Cortex M4 acts like a master. Okay, and all the other peripherals are actually slave to the master, that means to the CPU. Okay, and they both communicate through the various bus interfaces which you are seeing here. Okay, great. So hope you understood about the differences between the processor core, processor, and a microcontroller. Okay, so if you have any questions or doubts, let me know. And if you have any microcontroller, okay, at your hand, please open the data sheet or reference manual of your microcontroller and look at the block diagram of your microcontroller. You will understand various things and find out what exactly is the processor used in your microcontroller. Okay.